Hello everyone, welcome back to another Flesh and Blood video. It's finally time to look at brand new cards, a set that I'm really excited for. I can't quite do the full brief look at all of the heroes just yet, because at time of recording we don't have the last Guardian, but I am going to give my early thoughts on some of the cards we've already seen, some of the new mechanics, because I think some of them are really, really cool. We're not going to start with Brute, because I know I'm going to rant a bit with Brute, but we're going to start with Warrior, since we have both the heroes. So Kasai was the first hero we saw. She, I think, is really good compared to the original Kasai, which you obviously can't play anymore. There is still that idea of making that money and having your weapons attack for free. Kasai wants you to crack a gold every turn, which if you're playing the deck right, you can do it most turns. I think it's going to be a little hard in the early game, but in the late game it's going to be super easy to try to make a gold every turn. So mid to late you'll be able to come in with the swords for free pretty much every turn. Cards to look for with Kasai, I think a few pretty neat ones. Nourishing Emptiness is a pretty obvious good one, similar to how it's used in Dromai with Burn Them All. Burn Them All can banish all the attacks in your discard pile, so with Nourishing Emptiness and Kasai, you can just banish all of your attacks and get that Dominate of Nourishing Emptiness multiple times. Obviously, you're a warrior. You're probably not going to be running the most attacks, which Olympia will probably play a few attacks, so he'll be a little different from default warriors, but Kasai's definitely weapon-based. The attacks you're going to be playing are things like Nourishing, because of that synergy, Command and Conquer, and then probably also a few other like disruptive poppers, things like Humble or Erase Face, stuff like that. But I think Nourishing is kind of the best one because of that synergy with Kasai, and do definitely expect to see this one a lot. Some other cards are obviously we're good with Gold Generation. Some gold synergies, mainly things like Double Down we've seen so far, but also Raisin Army. Raisin Army is probably your main gold payoff other than her actual ability. I don't think I would run things like Double Down because you want to draw a card, and the gold's really the only way you can draw that card. So playing other stuff that I'm assuming we're going to get more cards like Double Down where you can pay the cost of the card with gold instead. But really there are only two actual gold synergies I think you should be on. The main one's Raisin Army because it's a block 3, just like most of the cards you're probably going to end up playing. But I think this is really strong late game potential, where if you're in a matchup where you can stack up a bunch of gold, making at least maybe like 4 or 5 of these sellswords, I think maybe even 3. I think if you make 3 of these sellswords, you're probably in a good spot to win. Since for a blue pitch, if you've already swung with a sword, you can come in for 9 if you have 3 of them, which is really strong. So I think Kasai definitely has that late game potential, and this gives her some scaling inevitability, kind of like Dory, where if you don't stop Dory from doing her thing, she's just going to run you over because the sword's going to get too big. But with Kasai, if you don't prevent her from getting gold, she'll eventually raise an army, make a bunch of things, and then just kill you with sellswords. And then the other synergy is obviously Cashin. Cashin just is very good with gold. It's a free draw. I don't know if the deck's going to be on Crown of Providence just to get that gold turn 1. In theory, it's really good. But if we think about it, getting the gold turn 1 will let you go faster. But personally, I don't know if this is going to be the fastest deck. I don't know if you want to play that fast, because if you end up going fast, you might, lose out early on some triggers. I'd rather be more consistent early and set up for the late game. I don't know how useful this ability is going to be in the first few turns. I guess the gold can let you get that early turn double swing with your sword, but personally I think Crown of Providence has a spot as well to be that extra block to get you later, which I think that's another good thing, is that Kasai definitely has two unique builds. One is a faster, more aggressive build that wants to just go with Crown of Dominion, and the other is a slower build that wants to set up a little more. Could still be on the Crown of Dominion, but the health from the Providence might be a little more important. And another package I think is pretty good is I think Kasai definitely has room to still play Blood on her hands. This is an extremely strong card, but without the hero's ability to generate copper, we have to rely on our cards, and there are three main cards that do so. Let me get the last one in here. One of them I don't think you're going to end up playing, and one of them I think is pretty bad. They're the same thing, but the main one you're going to play is Spoils of War. This is the best one. Even if you're not playing Blood on her hands, I think you still play Spoils of War. Gives your next attack +2 and go again, which a free go again is perfect. And then each time you hit with the weapon this turn, you make 2 copper. So each hit sets up a 2 of blood. So if you really only need 4, to be honest. The +1 is great and amazing, but you really only need the go again and the attack twice. So you really only need 4 copper. So 2 hits with the Spoils of War sets you up so nicely. And as well as this is a yellow to pitch away. And you're probably not playing too many blues. I know I said, I think I said a blue earlier for something. But you're probably not playing blues. You're probably just playing, for the swords, for the sellswords. You're probably not playing blues in this deck. If any, you'll play like Glint, because of how good Glint is, but that's like your only blue. So I think you're going to focus on reds and yellows, and this is just another yellow you can pitch, so it's your highest rarity already. The next copper generator is Outland Skirmish. I think this one's okay. It's an action that gives your next attack or next weapon attack +3, and the next time you hit with the weapon this turn, you make a copper. This one only generates 1, but if you think about it, right, you're going to play 3 of the red and 3 of the yellow. So you have sort of 6 extra copper generations in your deck, which I think that's pretty good. And then the final one's High Striker. This card sucks. Please don't play it. The only reason High Striker is here is because in theory, with High Striker, you can play it and then land 1 hit and then get a full Blood on her hands. I think it's really niche, and you're probably not going to do it, but it's really good in theory if you land it. This is the one card that, I'm not sure about. Since you're a warrior, you have a ton of reactions, of course. So you're going to be able to land that weapon hit through whatever your opponent does, and you even, again, have things like Nourishing Emptiness, which can get Dominate. And there's a lot of more overpower printed this set. I don't know if Kasai will use it at all, but you can land the High Striker. But this is like the last card I would play if you're looking for cards, and only if you're playing Blood on her hands, which, again, like the debate with the 2 helmets, I think if you're on a Crown of Providence build, you might want to consider the Blood on her hands just for that extra thing you can set up to help you win. Where if I'm playing Crown of Dominion, there's no way I can set this up. You're not going to play Blood, you're not going to play Skirmish, you're definitely not going to play High Striker, but I think you still play Spoils of War. And I guess with the Spoils of War, you can sack the coppers instead to pay for your cash-in. And I'd hope you don't end up pitching 2 yellows to draw off a copper, but I guess it's there if you don't have the gold. And I guess that could be another reason to want to play Outland Skirmish as well. The second hero we're going to take a look at is Olympia, to round out the warriors. So far, of the 4 new heroes we've seen, Olympia has been the least impressive to me compared to the others. I think Kasai is really strong, and I think KO is really strong. I think these two are definitely have the most potential, and I think Betsy's actually pretty good. We'll talk about more next when we talk about her, but I think Olympia has the reasons to be a good hero, but I think he gets better when we see more cards, which is another reason why it was a little hard to do this. Unlike with Bright Lights, where for all 3 of the Bright Lights heroes, even though we didn't see most of the cards, obviously Teklevesin was hard since he was built on a new mechanic, and this is actually kind of comparable to him, where it's hard to rate some of the heroes because they have a lot more synergy with the cards in the set, where some of them, of the cards we've seen, are great. Like Betsy, with just the cards we've seen so far, her Spec Bet Big and like Wage Might and even Wage Vigor, I think, are like perfect cards for her. But Olympia doesn't really have that. I think of all the cards here, he really only has like 3 cards that are actually good. So for Olympia, his ability is the first time you win a wager on each of your attacks, you get a gold. So again, kind of like Kasai, he's a gold-based hero. So you're already going to be playing things like cash in naturally because you have that gold generation. And I like that. I like that both of the warriors are based on the gold idea. And with both the brutes, you can see that too, where they both have a discard-based ability. And I would assume that the other guardian has some increased power ability. Obviously, we don't have it yet, but I do like that these two are built on the same synergy, so any innate class cards can get that synergy going of, okay, we can print a new cash-in type card for just Warrior because both the Warriors the set make gold. Something like that. So I do like that with Olympia, and I also really like his spec. Up the Ante is a really good card. For 3, you can get all 4 modes, which are Wage, Agility, Gold, and Vigor, and +3. As well as this is a 3-block blue. It's a reaction, so it can be really tricky. And then, in addition to that, you get an extra gold because you've wagered on this attack, because you're giving the attack wager. And this can go on any attack as well. This doesn't have to be your weapon. I think a problem with Olympia right now is since he's a warrior, he's going to be so weapon based, but he doesn't have a good weapon. Boltyn, I think, is a little similar, but Boltyn specifically has cards that want to work with his weapon, not so much cards that work with him, which yes, all of his cards work with him, but he, even though he's an attack action based warrior, has a few weapon synergies. Mainly one of his specs is a weapon synergy, and so far Olympia, since I'm assuming all of these heroes are only going to get 1 spec, Up the Ante really doesn't force that weapon idea. And if you look at Boltyn's weapon, Raiden is a perfect synergy because it's something he wants to be doing, which is charging cards, and the sword rewards you for it. But we don't have Olympia's weapon yet. I assume his weapon is going to have a wager on it. I think that would be cool. Maybe like a 2 for 3, or I guess 1 for 3 would be on rate for Warrior, where you can, say, wager maybe a Might token with your opponent. Even though Warriors this set don't get Might tokens, I think that could be a thing he does. I guess they don't want to do that. You could wager a Agility with your opponent, or even a gold, just to make extra gold. But I think some weapon like that could be really good for Olympia. But even with that, there's really only like 2 cards we've seen that I think are amazing with him. And those are the 2 actually other warrior cards we have. Take the Upper Hand and Hold 'em. A card like Double Down as well is actually pretty good, since you get extra gold. And I don't think this buffs the gold he gets from his hero ability, only what the wager is. But like Double Down's good because you don't have a spend cost like Kasai. So Double Down's good. So I guess it would be 3 cards. But the other 2 I think are actually really nice for him. Because none of the other dual class cards other than Double Down seem insane. Like, he's a warrior, so he's probably not going to clash well for Test of Agility. And Wage Agility is nice, but I'd rather do weapon things if I'm playing warrior, just because they have so many weapon synergies already. And sort of the same reason for Wage Vigor. I guess it depends. If he has 2 weapons, like Kasai, Wage Agility is a little better, because this can guarantee you get both weapons. And I think if he is a 2-weapon hero, you probably still play the Wage Agility, just to get that. As well as Agile Windup is a warrior hybrid card, but I don't know, this seems like only a brute card. But the main 2 things are the Hold'em take the upper hand. Starting with Hold'em, this is a way to give his weapon a wager, which if his weapon doesn't innately have a wager, I think these cards are going to be a little better than what we have already seen. Because something like Hold'em, or if his weapon doesn't have a wager, this will be better than most of the other pumps. Because I was getting a little, I don't remember what I said there. So if his weapon doesn't have a wager, this is insane. Because this gives his weapon wager, which gives him synergy with his hero. It's another wager for an up the ante. Even if his weapon does have wager, you can do multiple wagers, I assume. If you, obviously with something like Bet Big, you have to do all 3, because it says to do all 3. But if a card has 2 different wagers, I assume you can do both. So this is just a nice pump that gives you that wager that helps you with the Olympia. And Take the Upper Hand is actually probably one of the better cards I think we've seen so far. This gets, it's a reaction that gives something +3, but only if you've wagered this Chain Link, which this is already a deck that wants to wager. It's a +3 just straight to even, like, if you replay these Wage Agility. This card comes in for 10 at that point, which is huge. So it's extremely hard to lose a wager if you're playing a card like Take the Upper Hand. So I think this is definitely going to be one of the better cards to put in Olympia. But other than that, there really isn't anything old other than like Cash In, like I already said, that I think is great in Olympia that wouldn't be great in any other warrior. Since, again, we don't know his weapon, he could have an axe and play axe synergies, which also I think he could possibly be the best Decimator warrior, which sounds a little weird. Dory gets that 2 attack synergy, that's nice, but I think Olympia getting the extra gold synergies so you can have those attacks like Hold'em, like Double Down, just to like get that extra damage in. And of course these cards are 3 blocks, so they're not hurting your deck. I think could be a good choice. Next, let's talk about the Guardian. We only have a few Guardian cards right now, which I assume we'll get more when we get the second Guardian. And that is going to be Betsy. So Betsy's ability, when you play an attack where you wager, you can pay 2. If you do, give it +1 in overpower. Betsy's spec, Bet Big, is a 4-cost red. It has 8 power. And when you attack with it, you can wager a gold, might, and a vigor. Which I think, so far, Betsy is super strong. Because Betsy, to me, this says you may pay 2, which is the cost of Pummel. Which means if we ever have a card in our hand and 2 resources floating to pay for Betsy, we could not and make them mega overblock and threaten a pummel that we could or couldn't have, right? And in the situations where we even have the pummel too, we can give it the overpower, get the extra damage in, and still get that pummel effect. Plus, if we have the pummel and we do want to wager, and they block up to enough, and they say, oh, you don't have the pummel, they block exact, then we pummel over, we still get the wager. And that's really, really strong. This is, I think, going to be one of the best pummel decks in the game. As well as we are Guardian. We can play those aggro Guardian tools. A lot of the cards this set have really high power, which makes stuff like Rouse the Ancients absolutely insane. Already Guardian Bravo plays Rouse the Ancients. I think this could be arguably a better Rouse the Ancients deck, since a card like Bet Big gives you 8 of the Rouse, and I think you need 13, which means even with some of these new blues, like the Mighty Windup, which you're probably not playing, but something like Wage Might and Wage Vigor, which you probably will play because they're wager attacks, even the blue versions give you enough with something like a Bet Big to pay for that Rouse. And in addition to that as well, even though these two wager attacks only have 2 block, we don't have any classed cards yet. It is only this Drink Cycle, which is what I'm going to call it, that gives you the 2 tokens, and Bigger Than Big. And those are the only innate Guardian cards we have, and Bigger Than Big gives wager to an attack. So we're going to end up getting 2 or 3 other 3-block cards that have wager, that the blue is going to be good because it's Guardian, and the red is probably going to be insane in Betsy because it works with her. So this will be a great Guardian to have that aggro Schrodinger's pummel type deck. And honestly, this, other than KO, who I will talk about next, Betsy might be my second favorite hero so far. Obviously, we don't have the last one. Personally, I'm not too into the Warriors. I think they're cool, don't get me wrong. I just don't think they're the decks for me. Obviously, I like Brute. We're going to play KO. I guess we'll play Rhinar. But Betsy is really cool. And we obviously don't know the other Guardian. I think it's going to be Valda, because we had Kasai and KO, and we have one other slot that I assume would be a returning Guardian. And Valda makes sense, and I don't think they're going to do Bravo, considering he's here. And I don't think they're going to reprint 2 Welcome to Wrath heroes in this set. So, honestly, A+ for Betsy, even with just the cards we have so far. Finally, not talking about him yet, but KO, Armed and Dangerous. One of the, honestly, coolest cards in this set. Like, the flavor is there. The effect is there. This is what I was waiting for in a Brute hero. So, he has a lot of effects. First, he only has 1 weapon zone, which means you only get 1 claw. I assume they're going to reprint claw. His art has him have a claw. They could give him a new weapon that only he can use, kind of like Banksy, where it's a spec that only Max can play. I think that would be cool. And obviously KO only has 1 arm, so he'll only be able to play 1. Which, I guess young KO gets 2, which I think would also be fine. But that might make the Blitz KO a little too strong. Other than that, he gives the big effect. Your actions +1 power when they're not on the combat chain. Absolutely insane. Let's take a look at the list I already have built, which this isn't the final list, I'm just tinkering with things. But cards like Enlightened Strike, Madcap Charger, and Zealous Belting get an insane amount of value. Since now, Zealous Belting, all your blue 5s are 6 power, which means you can kind of just play Guardian. Enlightened Strike was a card that always felt pretty good in Brute, but it didn't have 6 power, so you don't play it because if you've ever discarded it, it just ruined your whole game. And then Madcap Charger was a bad card because it didn't have 6 power. But now that your magic number is 5, this is one of the best Brute cards you could put in the entire deck. Breakneck Battery was an all-star. The problem with Breakneck Battery in KO is that it costs 2. Something that you want for more premium attacks. Something that don't have a cost, like a Pulping or a Wild Ride. Or something that just come in for a huge amount of damage, like a Swing Big. For those Go Again effects, you want them to be cheap. Madcap Charger is that cheap effect, and you can pitch a blue, come in with this, come in with your Claw, come in with... I mean, if you have an extra card in your hand to discard, a Savage Beatdown. This is one of the cards I've been working with, but I think KO gets so much from that, and even, I already said, he just gets to play all these blue 5s. We've been asking for so long to give us a blue 6 for Rhinar, and they said no, but now we have the blue 5s. The decrease of 1 damage on most of your attacks doesn't matter, because 5 is still a hell of a breakpoint. So you just like get all this damage through for such little cost of just being on this hero, letting you play so many more cards. And then that's not even the rest of the effect. Because the first time we discard, that's kind of that discard theme that Brutes have. The first time we discard a 6 or more power card during your action phase, we get a Might token. So not only are we getting rewarded for having different cards in our deck, more blues in our deck, but now we're getting more power literally every turn for doing the Brute thing. Intimidate is a flawed mechanic because it doesn't do anything if your opponent's trying to kill you. It only helps you if they're trying to not die. But increasing your attack's power helps you kill them, and it makes it harder for them to kill you because when they want to block you, they have to waste more cards. So this type of effect, giving you more damage, is just so much better. It is absolutely insane. Obviously, it's only a once per turn, because if you could trigger this twice, I think he could be on that speedrun plan, kind of like Starvo did. Because honestly, I think this hero is insane. So, really, really strong with KO. We don't know his spec yet. I assume it's going to be dice rolling based, since the article they put, and I guess it wasn't an article, but on their website where they have like the thing for each hero, the one for KO had a few blank spots, and there was a section that talked about dice rolling or luck stuff. So I guess similar to Ready to Roll, they'll probably give us some luck thing, and I guess that would make sense. If we look at Kasai's spec, wherever it is, Raisin Army, it's money based, where it's not the exact thing, like this is gold, that's copper. Kasai's similar. KO is like no similarities at all. I guess increasing power, but KO also didn't care about you discarding cards at all. So, I don't know. I think the spec might be that dice roll type thing, but you probably don't play Ready to Roll because it's a non-attack. Non-attacks are very bad in this deck for a lot of reasons, and I don't know, if it's some middling effect for the dice roll that you don't care about, you probably don't care that it's a dice roll effect and still play it, or you just don't play the card. Like, honestly, even with the cards we have at this point, I don't think you even need it. Any other card they show from this point on just makes this deck way better. So, absolutely insane. None of the other Brute cards really help him. I'd say every Beat Chest card is more of a Rhinar card, and No Fear needs a bit more room to look at because I think this card's strong, but I think it's more meta dependent. Although this one I think is just a really cool card. But now we have to talk about him. Why is Rhinar Reckless Rampage in this set? It's every time, man. Every time. Whenever we see Rhinar, it's the same damn Rhinar. The Rhinar versus Dorinthia decks. Guess who got a new card? Dorinthia. Guess who got a new young hero? Dorinthia. Guess who got a actual new good weapon? Dorinthia. Don't tell me the new Dawnblade's bad. I do think it's actually pretty good in some situations. But guess what Rhinar got? Rhinar got the same old spec that he's been playing since the first set. He got a weapon that is literally worse than his default in every way. There is no reason to play Bone Basher over Romping Club. And like the cards he got weren't even like amazing. Some of them are actually decent, but compared to the strength of the new Dory spec, nothing in the Rhinar side went his way. So when we're actually getting a new normal Brute, because if there's a set with Leviah, I'm not really going to look to see if for Rhinar cards or a new Rhinar, because it's Leviah, it's not Rhinar. But now that we're actually getting Rhinar, why is it the same Rhinar again? More insult to injury, the young Rhinar art in this set is the same art as the one from the Dorinthia versus Rhinar decks. It's... I don't know. It's just... I expected more from Rhinar. I already said with KO, I think Intimidate is a bad mechanic. Intimidate is only good on turn 1 going first, because you can hit your opponent without them being able to cycle, or the last turn of the game because you stop your opponent from blocking your kill shot. Other than that, throughout the entirety of the mid game and any point in the early game where it's not your turn going first, Intimidate sucks. It is terrible. So it's here. Now obviously, thinking about it, young Rhinar is probably going to be decent for sealed and such. I think that was another consideration for them to bring back Rhinar. I see reasons for wanting to do it. They don't want to introduce too much things and then they printed KO and KO does everything. But like Betsy's pretty simple. Olympia's pretty simple. Kasai is a unique deck, kind of like if you look at the two assassins in Outsiders. Arachne is kind of like that Olympia spot where it's like a more, just general, if I got a bunch of assassin cards, I can play it. But Kasai is more of that Azuri where it's like I have this specific package and this specific stuff, I can play this more unique hero. So I get that. Rhinar is very simple. It's a really simple, easy to understand effect. Sure. But I don't like it. I don't think it feels good. The art on the adult Rhinar is great. I don't think they're printing a marvel of it. I wish they were. Because this, honestly, this art blows the original art out of the water. This art is insane. But the other problem is this is an M. When the other Rhinar is a token. Personally, I've been coming around to adult Majestic heroes. I think that's okay. But when the original version is a token and this one's a Majestic, this is a bigger rarity shift than what Magic does. This is taking a literal 1 cent card and making it the second, I guess it would be the third highest rarity, but Fables are kind of legendaries. So like the second highest rarity a card can be. which is so insane to me. I don't know why this card is majestic. Which, again, that kind of brings the reason, why print this Rhinar again? I think, to be honest, the way with the other classes, we have a wager hero, and then I'm assuming the other Guardian isn't going to be wager based like the other two wager heroes. I think they decided to go for sort of more like Outsiders, where it's only two actual new characters, because Arachne is a new hero but wasn't a new character. So these are like two new characters where Kasai and KO are brought back, and which is why I think we'll probably get a Guardian, not a new character as the other Guardian. But like Rhinar could have said, whenever you discard a card with 6 or more power during your action phase, your next attack gains +2 or gains, and then make that once per turn, or gains wager a Vigor token with your opponent, or something like that. Some smaller effect. I think even if he was the wager Brute, Brute didn't get a wager hero. Even if he was the wager-based Brute, it's a new Rhinar. So, or like, if an attack had an additional cost to discard a card, it gains wager, make a Vigor token, or something like that. That would have been great. I wouldn't have complained, even if it was a worse Rhinar than the original Rhinar. It's still a new Rhinar. And with each set, we're probably going to see one revisited hero. And I guess this is sort of a similar take to having original Katsu and Outsiders. But in Outsiders, that was off of a new class from a supplemental set that had other cards in a supplemental set. Assassin, I expected to get most of the bulk of stuff. Ninja was just there. But Brute hasn't gotten anything. The last 2 times we really had Brute cards, they've been Shadow Brute. So, I guess supplemental sets bring Brute cards. But the last main sets we had Brute cards were Shadow. So when we went back to that main set experience, I would have liked the Starvo treatment Rhinar, kind of like how they did for Dio. And even then, in between this reprint of Rhinar and the reprint of Katsu was a new unique version of Dash. So they showed that they can do this in main sets like they do with Dash, and they just didn't do it with Rhinar. So I guess rant over. I'm glad Rhinar's here, but I think it should have been a different Rhinar, not Reckless Rampage. But other than that, Show No Mercy's great. I really like this card. I think it's better than Alpha Rampage. This doesn't have an additional cost like Alpha Rampage does. You still get that Intimidate, and this can still come in for 9. So in more situations where you can like rip your opponent's whole hand, you do it with an extra non-attack instead of triggering the hero's ability. Which, again, if we had a different Rhinar, this would have made more sense because you didn't get the Intimidate off of the Alpha Rampage discard, triggering the hero. You just play this to get 1, and that's it. So, oh well. I think the art's cool. It shows like Rhinar breaking in. Or he's not even breaking in. I guess he's just fighting in the art. It's a little dark. I guess because of the fire, so the smoke makes it look like nighttime. So I can't really tell. But he's killing this dude. That's pretty cool. I think the art in this set's great. Small side note, I really like the art on all these cards. All the Brute cards, I think, look the way they should. I think a lot of the few Guardian cards we have look the way they should, and I think the Warrior cards definitely look really cool. And I like the way the dual class cards look. So, good job on the art. Already talked about No Fear. The last bit of brute stuff we had, I think's fine. I think Beach Chest is a cool mechanic. And I guess Beach Chest is a little better with Old Reiner. So that's another reason, I guess, to put Old Reiner in the set. So, sure, we're not going to talk about too much of them. I think Bonebreaker Bellow Red is really good, but I think the other ones are probably too niche to see play. Maybe Raw Hide Rumble Red could be okay. But without the new Guardian, I don't know how long this video would be. Or it currently is. Because we don't have the new Guardian yet, can't talk about it. I'll probably just ignore it until the set review. Because we have... This week is this video. So what's this Thursday? Today's Monday, so the 4th. So on the 4th, we have this video going up. On the 11th, we'll probably have the new Guardian by the 11th, but I'm not going to make a video on it. So next week, we'll probably do Sun. I don't know what we'll do next week. Maybe I'll start the deck reviews. I think KO and Kasai already are insane. So maybe I do them. But I mean, that's really it for my early impressions. Because after that, too, we'll have the whole set, and then we can start doing stuff and tests and stuff. So, but that is my early impressions. So, quick TLDR: KO and Kasai are insane. Olympia needs more cards. I think Betsy is one of the best pummel heroes in the game, and this Rhinar shouldn't have been in the set. That's pretty simple. Alright. I hope you all had a good day. Today, I'm recording it as New Year's Day. So I hope you guys had a good New Year's. And there isn't much else to say. Wish we had the last hero, but I do end up recording a lot of these on weekends. So if the new Guardian comes out the 2nd, 3rd, or the 4th, I'm sorry, but I didn't record it when it was revealed. Sorry, I guess. But ran too long. This video is already probably long enough. I hope you guys had a good day, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.